Okay, so we have our Experts by Experience group with us again today. Joining us, we have Lee Taylor, and we have Jill, we have Deborah, and Sue, and Luke with us today, who have all joined us to give some insight and talk about their experiences around the lifting of the lockdown restrictions that have been in place now since the beginning of March. So we're looking at 3 months. Things are starting to ease, and there's recognition that as the lockdown restrictions have been easing, it has brought a lot of happiness to people, where they're able now to see family, see friends, meet up in outdoor areas. And as of this Monday, non-essential shops are going to be opening, so there's going to be more people able to access areas. But for some people, I can imagine that the lifting of the restrictions can cause greater difficulties in some areas of their life, and increase anxieties. So the group today are going to be sharing some of their thoughts and feelings around that and considerations that they've had. And we're going to start with Deborah today, if that's all right, Deborah. What are your thoughts and feelings around the lifting of these restrictions that have come into play, and have they had any specific impacts on you?
Initially, as a parent, there has been an awful lot of organisation to do, and that is to do with children going back to school, some children not going back to school, doctor's appointments, things that are starting to resume. So getting some kind of structure back into my life has been tricky, because everything's changed. So, you know, the whole household has changed and all the timings have changed. So it's gone from a very relaxed kind of household to suddenly a very busy, timetabled household again. What makes me anxious on a personal level, as my personal impact, is the uncertainty. But I guess that's probably the same quite across the board for many. It's the adjustment that we made from going into lockdown and then becoming, you know, accustomed to that and dealing and coping with that, and then the changes that are happening and the uncertainty for the future that we could go back into lockdown again. So this kind of unsettled. And then specifically things like shop confrontations, so only one member of the household being allowed to go in, which I've brought up before at another meeting. I'm anxious about that with the wider opening of shops. I'm finding that you know, I'm finding that really difficult. I mean, I went into a shop which was quite a large shop yesterday that was open, and it was difficult, even though the shop was large and there weren't very many people in there. The social etiquette has changed completely, and I feel like I'm on a massive learning curve, and it felt very uncomfortable, and that's without the mask, the face mask thing and everything else, you know, this sort of feeling I'm going to be shamed if I don't wear a face mask. And I have seen the visors and they look great, but that is quite a commitment to wear a full face visor. You know, and then also my husband will be going back to work as well. So, and I've been used to having him home. So there are lots and lots of changes and that are going to make a massive impact. And so, yeah, I have a certain amount of anxiety around those, sort of preempting those.
Yeah.
So that's.
You mentioned about the face masks, Deborah. Does that cause you specific anxiety? Because of course, yes, face masks are they're already compulsory on public transport. Yeah. So when people are out and about, but you know, some shops are bringing it in that if you cannot keep your social distancing, then the recommendation will be to wear a face mask. What is it about that in particular that makes you feel anxious?
Okay, so there's two things really. I mean, there's the reciprocity of being able to see the whole of somebody else's face, but then there's also the fact that I wouldn't want to wear something on my face. you know, I think I would feel a bit suffocated. I know that a fabric face mask, it would get really hot. I mean, I have a real sensitivity around clothing. So, I mean, I don't know about the other members of the group, but I can go through several clothing changes in a day or in a morning or in a, you know, and I can really get, you know, that can be really difficult. So yeah, the face mask is, you know, another extension of that issue. The sort of the sensory issue from a personal perspective of wearing the mask, but then also, yeah, the visual aspect of not really needing to see the whole face to be able to help me with deciphering people's actions and expressions. And yeah, it does further complicate the social experience. And as a business owner with my husband, from a work perspective, I may have to wear one when I'm in the shop with customers. I may have to do that, and that is going to be really tricky.
It's just something that's so out of the ordinary, isn't it, for everyone, really, that there's never been another time that I can remember where we've needed to wear face masks, unless we choose to wear face masks, but needed to wear them in certain situations. So it is a massive change in impact.
Yeah. I don't want to wear one. I don't want to wear a big T-shirt that says, you know, I have sensory issues or you know, or ASC or something. So that's why I'm not wearing a face mask. But it feels like that, you know.
Yeah, that you need to make it known if you're not wearing one, why you're not wearing one almost.
Yeah, it feels really that feels really strange. I see on the back of people's cars, you know, not all disabilities are visual or visible, and I've experienced that before, you know, with people commenting or talking, you know, when I've been out with my children, and it's I just don't know why that even has to be said. Yeah. Seems very backward, but there you go.
Perhaps not enough at the moment in recognition amongst the community about these issues, I think, as well. So brilliant, thank you. For yourself, Sue, I believe you've been shielding for the past few weeks, haven't you, Sue?
Yeah.
So where are you at in terms of restrictions lifting? Have you been made aware of when you will stop shielding, and how do you feel about when, because obviously shielding, it's a long time to spend, isn't it, at home and not be outside at all. So how do you feel about those restrictions changing for you?
The only change we've got is we can go for a walk.
Okay.
It's been difficult for me shielding. First of all, not shielding because when the lockdown happened, because I was never in to go and from in full time, that took a toll on me. So I've got support person that comes lunchtime as well now, because I wouldn't get through the day because it was too much of a change. But when I go for a walk, I do go for the walk now, but she comes with me because I don't get, when I see people coming along, it doesn't register how far away or how near they are to me. So she tells me to stop. So I either just stop and freeze, or I walk in the road without looking. So that's a bit difficult for me trying to do social distancing, because I don't get the distances like maybe other people would. So that's a bit stressful, you know, going out for the walks, but nothing else really has eased. And it's hard for me because I've obviously got a nasty neighbour, so I can't even go in my garden. So I found it really hard because I am like secluded.
You've been quite isolated, haven't you, for some time at home? And how does the uncertainty feel for you? Because of course, for everyone, we're experiencing some level of uncertainty as to when we may get back to the normal that we knew before all of this. And you know, there isn't any timeline to that, is there? It is so uncertain about what the future is and what that holds. So how has that been? How does that impact for you?
Well, each time you listen, because you think there's going to be a change, but it's a change, and then it says, but not for those that are shielding. So you're more or less, we've just got that one walk a day, but there's nothing else like letting out for us. So it seems to be a bit worse. But saying that, if I was allowed to go in shops, I don't think I would, because I've got anxiety with that now, where like you look at Spain and things, they're going back with double cases a day now after lockdown's been eased, because it's still out there, obviously, where you're getting like 5,000-6,000 cases a day on the testing. So it's still quite prevalent out there, and that scares me then, where I've been in so long, scared to go out, if you see what I mean, even when I'm allowed to.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a funny situation for me.
I can understand that, because like you said, for as long as we know that the virus is still prevalent within the community, it's going to have a certain level of anxiety for all, I can imagine. That's brilliant. Thanks for sharing that, Sue. How about for yourself, Luke? Because obviously you've been working throughout this period at home, haven't you? So you continued with that routine. But how about as the restrictions are lifting for you, does that pose further difficulties or things that you're needing to plan for?
I think something that comes to mind is that for me, there might be certain individuals that I'm not too bothered or looking forward to seeing personally. That could be in like not the same office as me, but in the same sort of building. And I think that can be the same for others on the autism spectrum. There might be certain in different environments that we're going to have where we're not too bothered about seeing them. And then obviously others that we are looking more forward to seeing, such as your mum and dad, for example. If you don't obviously live with them, which I don't. So I'm looking forward to seeing more of them, and not sort of talking from distance away with my parents. So that'll be good. I think shops comes to mind is I'm an online shopper. I've never been like massively into shopping.
Okay.
I don't object to going to a shop, because I do obviously like food shopping, but like clothes shopping, etc. I think online shopping would still suit me, because I personally find on the whole and another thing is some shops are really narrow.
I keep losing you there, Luke. Sorry, it's cutting out a little bit as you're talking. Could you?
So I was just saying about in the shops, yeah, that obviously in shops itself, some shops can be quite narrow. You have a mask on, for example. Even with a mask on, you would walk closely by people. It wouldn't necessarily be that 2-meter gap sort of thing. So that comes to mind. I mean, obviously, somewhere a bit more spacious, off the top of my head, somewhere like IKEA, for example. IKEA is bigger, and you probably feel like you would have your own space, and it'd be easier to be apart from other shoppers. But in narrow shops, the sort of small chain shops, you know, clothing shops sort of thing, like a kind of a chemist kind of shop, it might be quite narrow. But you know, now that lockdown is eased, I've been able to play a lot of tennis, because I love doing that, and I go for walks in my own time. But I still find quite a lot of time is spent at home, because I have a full-time job Monday to Friday, and need to sort of chill at the end of a day. But what I would like to probably do more, if I can find the time, is do mindfulness stuff, because I'd like to do more of that. Yeah, so that's what really comes to mind for me.
That's really interesting, Liz. So you talk about mindfulness stuff. Is that something that had interested you, or that you were using for relaxation previous to the coronavirus situation, or is it something that you've recognised to be more beneficial now to support you moving forward?
Yeah, well, I did a mindfulness course through my church, but also with work at the moment, I have found that there's like a coffee morning where there's 3 kind of like speakers, and they'll run the session, and everybody sort of tunes in and listens. And they've got some things to say which is helpful to hear, and just about being kind to yourself. And then there was sort of like a exercise one that I saw the other day, where it was a lady from work who was doing exercises sort of in her living room, and we would follow with doing the exercises, sort of stretching and stuff. And just a thing I want to add to that, just all that, is the business about being kind to yourself. I think what comes out of this is that you've got to be kind to yourself, whether you live on your own or with others. And I think with myself, I've learned during this time not to say be so hard on myself, and to be kind to myself. But also, if we live with others, if we have children or a spouse, say, then it's just really important to be kind to each other. And also I found that you'll find that out there as well, because people during lockdown haven't necessarily come across too many people during the lockdown time. So when they do at the shop, for example, to me, there's been quite a good vibe and a thing of people being kind to each other. So all I'll say on that note is just that I hope that can continue and people can continue to be kind to themselves, but also be kind to each other, because that's really important. And also the whole thing of acceptance. So for example, myself with the quirks I have, the accents I do, the funny mannerisms I have, I accept that myself. So it's really important that people can accept and embrace that for me, but also for others on the autism spectrum as well, for a better world that's, you know, accepting of autism, just like it's accepting of other differences in the world. And I think that's really important, that people can just appreciate and accept people for what they can offer and the skills they have. And we definitely can offer a lot when we're on the autism spectrum. So acceptance is really important. So that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Brilliant. That's really insightful. Thanks, Luke. And I think as well, it is that acceptance, and it's like Deborah was saying with the face mask, it's that non-judgmental approach of people as well, isn't it? To try to understand that, you know, there may well be a reason why somebody may have a preference for something, or, you know, avoidance to something as well. So that understanding is really, really important. So hopefully that's a positive moving forward out of this pandemic.
Not seeing the mouth is quite tricky as well, just seeing like the eyes and the eyebrows, and not seeing the mouth, trying to register and see what that expression is can be very hard. And I could understand how that's very confusing for somebody on the autism spectrum.
Absolutely, absolutely. So let's hope that's a positive moving forward, where, you know, there is more understanding and less judgment of people, as a positive to come out of this situation. Yourself, Jill, if I move on to you, again, you've continued to work during some of this period, haven't you? And again, working from home as well. But how has this been impacting you as we now move into less restrictions being placed on us? Does it cause you any other difficulties?
It's caused me some almost surprising difficulties from the beginning. I've been very conflicted because my mum and I both count as extremely vulnerable because we've got chest condition. But neither of us really wanted to completely shield for the sake of our mental health and some of the people we are friends with and support. So I've got a friend who's autistic. I've been bringing her to the group. I don't know if Sue's met her, she might have done. But she's completely on her own. She lives alone. She's a bit older than me, but she's quite young emotionally, like I am. And so even though I was supposed to be shielding, I was going out for walks quite late in the evening to avoid other people for the sake of my mental health as much as hers. So that was really hard. And then when the guidance came out about the extremely vulnerable people who should be going to work from home, that was really hard for me, because at the time it was just me and two other ladies in the office who were pregnant at the time. And I don't know, it almost felt like a disgrace. I've been sent home and can't work out here anymore. And I knew it wasn't. I knew they were looking after me, but I didn't enjoy it. I find it very hard to work at home. I find it very hard to stay focused on what I'm doing, not get distracted. I like the environment of the office. I found that a really rewarding place to work with other people. It's really improved my own sort of social skills and things. So I've been very cut off really from that, and it's hard to do all that from home. Again, with the measures sort of decreasing as we come out of lockdown, it's kind of that limbo phase, which is almost worse. So if you're actually in lockdown, you're at home and that's sort of fairly easy. But when you've got to do things like wear masks, you've got to go to places where they've got social distancing measures, that can be really quite disturbing. A few weeks ago, I went to Aldi for shopping. And they've got these big plastic glass barriers between tills. And I nearly walked into one because I didn't see it. And that really freaked me out because I'm used to that shop and I know where everything is. And then suddenly there were things that weren't there before, which really concerned me. Sensory issues again with masks, same as most people have said. For me also, I get quite intimidated by people who I can't see their full face. that causes me anxiety, not just because I can't read them, but because we're kind of taught in society that if someone tries to cover their face, it's because they're a bank robber or something to be alarmed about. It's a sign of someone trying to conceal something about them, and so that's quite disturbing. And again, the shopping issue, I know Deborah's had this issue as well. If you're autistic, you are allowed to be with someone else. You always have to prove it, so there's a bit of awkwardness there, but you will get dirty looks from all sorts of people around the shop, which has happened quite a lot. I tend not to notice, but my friend has noticed when she's been with me, because she sort of supports me as well as a sort of unofficial care worker. Occasionally she's got me out of some situations I didn't know how to deal with. The biggest issue I'm finding at the moment is related to hospital. I don't know if anyone else has had any experience with medical centres or anything, but I've had some problems with my stomach and I ended up in A&E. Now, because of COVID, A&E was quite empty, so it didn't take that long to get through it. They had all sorts of measures around to keep people sort of far apart, but you ended up in chairs in the corridor and stuff. It wasn't great. But because of COVID and because I'm high risk, they actually sent me home and asked me to come back the next morning to have some further tests done. So I didn't have that stress of having to stay in hospital. So that was good. On the other hand, they've now sent me to have a gastroscopy next week. And in order to have that done, they expect you to self-isolate completely for 7 days before the procedure. They then expect you to go into hospital to have a COVID swab test done 48 hours before the procedure. And only if that's clear will they give you the procedure, however urgent it is. This is sort of the rule they've kind of fallen into. Now, that's caused me an awful lot of anxiety because I've been sort of on my own living with my parents, but that can be quite difficult in itself. And although people don't know this, the swab test is actually quite invasive. It's not just to sort of move around your mouth or around your nose. They push it quite far in and it causes quite a lot of almost pain and discomfort. So I'm not looking forward to having to have that done again tomorrow. But I don't think people are aware that actually they can harm autistic people who have sort of stronger sensitivities to these kind of things, because they don't realise that is actually causing them pain almost, or certainly some significant discomfort. So yeah, bit of a mixture really.
Yeah, and I think hearing what you were saying, Jill, about the differences when you go to familiar places now, so when you go into shops or whether you go into hospital, and there's always been a certain expectation or predictability to what that visit may be like, I think it emphasises more than ever the need for there to be that open communication about these changes. And, you know, one idea that I've been discussing quite widely with other professionals is being able to provide people with photos and videos and snapshots of what it will be like when you go to hospital, or if you're going to go into your local supermarket and suddenly you're seeing that the screens are put up and these sorts of things, which you may not have experienced yet, Sue, as well. But, you know, there are going to be some longer term adaptations made to environments. And I think the more that we can visualise that for people before they visit, so that they know what to expect and are not surprised when they do arrive, that would be a really helpful tool. So yes. Brilliant. So finishing off with you, Lee, we've not forgotten you. For yourself, again, you've been working at home during this period, and it may well be that you continue for some time yet, but are there other aspects of restrictions being lifted that have caused you difficulties or that, you know, worry you?
I think the secret is to just take things slowly. Just because a restriction is being lifted doesn't mean that you have to take advantage of it. The main worry I would have about restrictions being lifted would be that it's being done too quickly, and that there are commercial and economic pressures being applied against the medical risks. So there's pressure, for example, being exerted to reduce the distance from 2 metre to 1 metre, and I think that's probably the wrong balance. I'm also obviously concerned about what's been going on with the Black Lives Matter thing, that there've been, you know, large protests, and I'm worried about that spreading through the community, particularly since it seems that the Black, Asian and minority ethnic community seem to be particularly susceptible to the virus. So those are concerns, I think, more generally. What I've actually taken advantage of in the restrictions being lifted is actually the ability to go for a drive. When the lockdown first happened, it was an offence to just go for a drive, and I felt that was entirely wrong. But now I know I've taken the opportunity and taken my wife to out down to Hythe for a nice little view across the water there and so forth. So that's good. At the moment, I seem to be behind the curve because I'm just getting used to being locked down. So I've moved into my nerd cave, my study, and at the beginning of this week, and it has made a huge difference to my productivity. So hopefully, some of the business pressures will be off a bit more now. Yeah, I just wanted to mention something, which is the Autscape conference. Autscape is a conference organised by autistic people with the needs of autistic people, particularly in the forefront, although you don't have to be autistic to join it. It's normally residential, 3-day residential in the UK at the end of July, but obviously it's not going to take place now because of the COVID mitigations. However, that means that they're now going to be taking the conference online, and that's a real opportunity because people would have problems travelling or not be able to afford it previously, and they'd be limited by the space at the venue. So Autscape is available to join online. The cost is £20. That's the normal price. I don't know if there's sort of reduced prices available. Just go to autscape.org. I think we'll probably link that on the podcast, hopefully, and I can thoroughly recommend it. Look at the Autism Hampshire's Facebook group for a description in more detail about it. So I'm hoping, quite excited that that would be good. I know, for example, that at least one colleague is also going to be joining, so that's going to be really good.
Yeah, thanks, Lee. And you know what, that's a really nice note to finish on, because I think, despite the challenges that we're all facing at this time and the adaptations that we're all needing to make, I think moving forward there will be some positives to take from all of this. And the broadening opportunities for people to access things through different means. For some people, the idea of going to such a big event as Autscape may cause anxiety, but actually being able to access things now through a virtual arena, through smaller events and things like that, could be a real positive, and hopefully one that will be taken forward post-pandemic, so that it broadens access for people to different formats, and it'll widen people's opportunities, I guess, as well. So as you said, Lee, yes, we have promoted Autscape on the Autism Hampshire Facebook page, so you can go and check on that, as well as lots of other resources, signposting and links to further resources and strategies, really, for people to think about in the lifting of lockdown and restrictions. So take a visit to that. We'll be back with a further podcast in a few weeks' time. But until then, thank you everyone for joining today, and we'll see you all soon.
Thank you.
Bye.